She's camera shy. She's a little camera shy. She has the softest belly. Oh no. Here we go. Don't mind the dog. So we interviewed Zohran Mamdani, who is a Democratic nominee running for Assembly District 36 in New York. If you are an activist or a candidate running and would like to be on our show, please email us at thefarleftshow@gmail.com. And here's the interview.
Hey, how's it going?
He's connecting the audio.
Oh.
There you go. Hi.
No, you could hear us. You could hear us.
Hey, so sorry about all this.
Award-winning smile you got. So welcome to the Far Left Show. Do you want to do the intro?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we're here with Zohran Mamdani, who is a Democratic nominee for Assembly District 36 in New York. And I also saw that your job is as a housing counselor. And I was actually just curious exactly what you do in that position, and thought maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So it's actually now my former job. My job has since let me go since I won the primary.
Got it.
We had an agreement that if I lost, I could come back. If I won, then I couldn't. What I would do is I would work with low to moderate income homeowners across the borough of Queens who are facing foreclosure issues with their longtime family homes. So these were people who, might have paid 27 years of their 30-year mortgage, and then suddenly they'd been laid off their job that they would work at for decades. People who their son had an unexpected medical emergency and the bank refused to give them forbearance for a few months. And so I would work with clients who were experiencing the housing crisis firsthand. And for me, it was definitely a bit of a radicalizing experience, although I was already kind of a radical by that point. But still, you kind of leave your job feeling like the sky is falling every day, because the foreclosure crisis is spoken about in the past tense. And then every day I would be working with clients who were really being threatened with eviction and homelessness on a regular basis through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
Got it.
I wanted to ask, what radicalized you originally? Is that cereal or yogurt? Oh my goodness. What is all that? Oh my God. Is that a margarita?
These are old school glasses my mom has. This is a vanilla Swiss almond ice cream.
Badass. You should do that on CNN when they get you on there.
Tell us about the housing crisis. To the crisis.
Yeah. What radicalized you?
I think honestly, growing up in the family that I grew up in, I was quite open to what would be considered being a radical from a very young age. I mean, all from the beginning, my identities are already considered radical by a lot of mainstream American, political thought. So being a Muslim, being an immigrant, these are things that already kind of put you in the box of other. And so it's not that far of a jump, because whenever you stand up to speak up for the rights of others who share the same identity as you, then you're a radical, right? So often people in this country are considered radicals if they stand up for Palestinian human rights. But, like today, there's a big outcry happening in New York City politics. Well, not a big outcry, but it's just on Twitter, and it's just, classic Twitter fingers, about the organization I belong to, New York City DSA, being in favor of BDS and basically acting upon the support of BDS through questionnaires that are distributed to people. And for me, it's just like the same logic of BDS existed with North Carolina when they were trying to pass that bathroom legislation, right? The anti-trans legislation they had there. And Governor Cuomo banned state employees from traveling to North Carolina. That is BDS, right?
Yeah.
It's the same logic. But when certain identities are involved, when certain issues are being spoken about, then the same logic applied makes one into a radical.
Could I actually had a tweet of yours. I got some of your tweets. I'm going to say it out loud. Right-wing Democrats are scared. And not only because we're challenging their power here, They're scared of global movements of solidarity like BDS that challenge apartheid, occupation, and white supremacy around the world, from Ferguson to Palestine, and they know we can win. And so I wanted to ask you about tying that to Ferguson is really interesting, and I don't think that happens very often. Why did you do that?
I think because it's important to talk about what occupation means. I mean, Chris wrote this whole book about a colony and a nation and the way in which police function in this country, and how, part of it in many ways is the police as an occupying force in the colonies of this country, although they're not typically described as such. And we have to make that connection, because a lot of times people seek to divide what are actually interconnected struggles. And, I'm very inspired by an organization called the Dream Defenders. The Dream Defenders is an organization, I think, predominantly based in Florida. And they've done a lot of, Black Palestinian solidarity work. They've done actually trips to Palestine. And it speaks to the same banal ways in which existence is criminalized in Ferguson, right? We think after the murder of Mike Brown, there was a lot of discussion about the ways in which the city would tax its Black residents, right? Mike Brown they spoke about Mike Brown being murdered because he jaywalked, and people spoke about just how many, parking tickets and how much revenue the city was getting from this fiscal harassment and targeting of its Black residents. You think about the same ways in which Palestinians are targeted, both in Palestine and in the state of Israel, and these kinds of different ways in which your existence is very much criminalized. Having to go through checkpoints, having to drive on certain roads, not being able to take certain buses, consistently facing fines and all these kinds of things to make an example of you that also provides funding and the revenue necessary to keep the state alive.
Yeah, and we see that on the electoral level. Ilhan Omar had so much money thrown against her in her race, and I heard you were an extremist. I don't think that's true, though. What's going on?
Yeah, I was.
What is
so Lyft? There's an organization called New Yorkers for Flexible Work, and it's basically kind of like a front organization, and its supporters and funders include groups like Uber and Lyft. And New Yorkers for Flexible Work spent more than $15,000 against my candidacy and in support of my opponent's candidacy, running ads on Spotify labeling me as an extremist. And I think that it's, when you're a Muslim candidate, you expect certain things like this. Doesn't make it acceptable, but it's sadly what life is like to be a Muslim candidate. And when you're a Muslim socialist, it's double.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you spoke of Ilhan Omar. We're talking about that kind of funding to the next level. We're talking about, I think she was outspent. I think someone said she was outspent 7-1, right? Millions of dollars being poured into this race because of exclusively of her views with regards to Israel. And it is just such a beautiful thing to see her, to see Rashida triumph over these attempts to defeat them in their first term in Congress. And I mean, a lot of the narratives were that they survived these challenges, but I think Rashida won by 30 plus points. Ilhan won by around 20 points. And there were comparisons of how Ilhan had done last time she ran versus this time, and how her opponents had done. And she had managed to increase her size of support within the district, while her opponent hit the ceiling that was already set by previous opponents.
And you said they put Spotify ads out against you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first time I heard was because somebody tagged me on Twitter saying that they heard an ad on Spotify which referred to me as an extremist and was in support of my opponent. I hadn't, and then I actually, around that same time, I went to a friend of mine from high school runs a gyro restaurant in Astoria, and I was putting a poster up there, and the woman who was running the counter, she was like, "Oh, I heard your ad on Spotify. I'm voting for you."
Oh no.
So I was like, I guess the ad didn't work that well, but
well, thank God we
those
have.
were the first times that I heard it.
Do you have Spotify or?
I do have Spotify. I do have Spotify, and I've used Lyft. It's really not a great match.
Oh man.
Jokes on them. I'm still giving them money.
jokes on them.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah. You also mentioned that you're a socialist. So I was just curious, like, how did you realize that socialism is the way to go?
I think I've been a socialist for quite a while, but I don't think I've understood myself within the terms of that label. And I think that is something that I not only internalized but also became comfortable expressing when I became an active member of New York City DSA, which is an organization that I've been a member of. I attended my first meeting in early 2017, but I've been a much more active member since 2018. And I think, for me, a lot of times people try and scare you into never embracing the word. And I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do to change our branding. Because socialism in and of itself, the way I understand it, is a fight for the state to provide all that is necessary to live a dignified life for each and every person in our state. And that is something that when you explain it in that way, and when you talk about the way in which it is applied, when you're talking about typically housing, healthcare, education, but I would argue we must expand that beyond and talk about public transit and talk about internet and talk about childcare. People are receptive to that. And I think that is my victory, the fact that every single New York City DSA candidate running for local office in New York City, every single one of us whose names were on the ballot, all 4 of us won. Right? We're sending 3 socialists to the state assembly. We're sending 1 socialist to the state senate. We already have another socialist in the state senate. It's very exciting. And I think this is about the 100-year anniversary of 4 to 5 socialists being expelled from the New York State legislature because they were socialists. And now here we come, a little more color in the slate, and we're back.
yeah, I really respect how you're a happy, like, nice socialist. On at least me and many friends, not only sort of, but I get really angry as a socialist because of our capitalist system is really, it's so far from socialism. I mean, socialism for the rich, but so I really do respect the brand. I wanted to ask you, what did I want to ask you? Oh, okay. So this is another one of your tweets. It's responding to Dave Wasserman saying, "I've seen enough. Representative Ilhan Omar wins renomination," right? And you wrote, "Right-wing Democrats really putting the L in capital lately." I thought that was great. So the Democrats have a lot of capital that they are throwing against some of their own candidates. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I would say, it's not the official arm of the party. It's not the institution itself, the DCCC, but it is a lot of the people who would fund Democratic candidates are putting up this kind of money, multi-million-dollar endeavors. There is a group that put multi-million dollars against Ilhan, that put multi-million dollars against Jamal Bowman in support of Elliot Engel. Mm-hmm. And I think what's so exciting is that, there's a level of professionalization that we've reached with certain campaigns across this country on the left that are running for state office, that are running for federal office in terms of Congress, that mean that we can get outspent 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times even, but we're still able to operate at a certain place that can make up that gap. Mm. And I think that's, to me, it's almost like a ritual of the donor class to set their money on fire when it comes to running against DSA candidates. I mean, in New York City, look, the Democratic Assembly Campaign Committee, DAC, sent my opponent upwards of $100,000. I think it was $125,000 with 9 days left in the election.
Yeah.
$125,000. And then my opponent put $200,000 that she had raised in that last 11 days. She raised 240 something, and she put 200 towards one consultant called Parkside Group. And then that 200K was broken down into 100K for mail, 80K for digital ads, 15K for a poll. And you just see the ways in which this money is wasted and the ways in which this money is set on fire. And the fact that there isn't a desire to keep up with the times and innovate. And that's why we keep winning. Look, I believe in socialism. I am a socialist, but it would be naive of me to say that all that won this election was ideology. It is also putting that ideology into hard work and making sure that you have a campaign that allows people to not seek permission when they want to take part, and that kind of encourages people to try things that are a little extraordinary. So just as much as me talking about the need to decommodify housing, I would say it was equally important that we had people chalking on the sidewalk, putting posters up in the, in shops, putting, putting out text messages to every single voter in the district, ensuring that our campaign was ever present, right? That
Yeah.
we had a really popular brunch spot in Astoria, that they were putting our palm cards in their bags when they were giving people their food, right? These are the kinds of things that you need to do, because what the real opportunity is that we're going up against machines that are calcified, that they haven't even exercised this muscle in so long. All they know how to do is raise money and give that money to a consultant, and the consultant will send out mail and digital ads. And that's not enough anymore, because people see so much of it, they just tune it out.
Yeah, they took a pretty big L trying to do that too.
Yeah.
So, do you have another question?
Well, okay, this might be a silly question, but
Please.
it's worth asking for people who don't know, and myself included, honestly. But what exactly does a state assembly member do? Like, what are the responsibilities?
This is not a silly question at all. It is very hard to keep up with. If you're in New York City, you have a person who represents you called a district leader. They represent you kind of within the party apparatus, Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Then you have somebody who represents you who's called a city council person. They represent you in the municipal government, the city council. Then you have somebody called a state assembly person and a state senator. These two people represent you in the two different houses that form state government. Then you also have your congressperson. Then you have your two senators that represent your entire state and the U.S. Senate. You have your governor, lieutenant, all these kinds of things. In terms of the individualized district things, the state senator and the state assembly person, what makes us important in people's lives is that in New York, partially as a function of the bankruptcies of the 70s and 80s, a lot of power is concentrated in the state. So if you want to change anything to do with the MTA, if you want to change anything to do with housing, if you want to change anything to do with the way in which students are admitted to the top public high schools in New York, if you want to change anything to do with healthcare, it's all at the state level. The city council is, higher paid position. It's slightly sexier because it's in New York City. You don't have to go to Albany. You're in like a public and the press eye a little more, but your powers are very, very circumscribed, right? Your main power in the city council is, I would say it's in three places. It's with regards to police funding. It's with regards to screens and admissions policies for the vast majority of New York City public schools, and land use and rezonings. But really, the real power is at the state level. So that is what's so exciting for me, is that I think that nationally, it's a very difficult terrain as socialists, but locally, there is a real opportunity for us. And if you talk about bang for your buck in terms of not only fundraising, but also how much impact you can have on people's lives versus how difficult it is to win these races, I think state races is where everyone should be focusing their time. And ideally, you build enough power in each state that when we finally get to a point where we can support a national figure, we can deliver these states to that figure.
Yeah.
Are you saying Bernie was a little premeditated?
No, I think Bernie was great. I mean, Bernie is a big part of the reason that I am where I am. But I think that, we kind of only had Bernie. I don't know how to put it, but he had to put the whole team on his back.
Yes.
And, he came to New York. He did the rally at Queensbridge. It was awesome. But there were less than 10 electeds on that stage who had endorsed him, right? We need a future where the next Bernie Sanders comes to New York, does a rally, and there are like 30, 40, 50 electeds on that stage. I want there to be too many electeds so they can't even be on the stage, because we need to expand the electorate, retain and strengthen that electorate, and then be able to turn those people out for a national socialist figure. And I feel like Bernie, it was all kind of left on Bernie to do a lot of these kinds of things. And versus you look at like the centrist wing of the party, they were able to consolidate the vote. I'm a little different than a lot of people on our side who are kind of like, it was corrupt and like, and it's kind of like, I just think this is rational. We would have done the same thing if we had 3 or 4 leftist candidates who all, believe in the relatively same vision and knew that one of them was best placed. I think we would have consolidated as well. I think we need to get to a point where we have 3, 4, 5 leftist candidates, because there kind of were different versions of Joe Biden on that stage, up to like 5 or 6 of them. We need that.
Yeah. So Bernie paved the way for you to run eventually, hopefully.
Yeah.
Really, honestly.
I can't run for president. I'm born in Uganda.
Oh, whoa.
Wow.
Wait, can you tell us a little bit
So,
about that? What's up?
Yes, I was born and raised in Uganda in East Africa, and I came to the U.S. I came to New York at the age of 7 in 1999, and I am a proud Ugandan. I'm very, very. I have a lot of love for my home, and honestly, there are so many fantastic people just in the slate alone. If we saw Farah Soufran Forrest or we saw Jabari Brisport running for president, I would be extremely excited.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. I wanted to ask you about your rap career.
Please.
Would you ever drop a mixtape while in office? I mean, okay, for our viewers, he's a rapper.
So look, here's the thing. In New York State, there is no ban on outside income for state legislators. And for a lot of people, that means they spend some time working as like a corporate lawyer, or they spend some time, doing like high level professional jobs. But there was an assembly person. His name was Michael Dendecker. He lost to a progressive challenger named Jessica Gonzalez Rojas. Michael Dendecker was a member of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and he would sometimes moonlight as an actor. So I don't see why I can't be a Young Cardamom, in the way that Dendecker paved the way for me. So maybe there will be a track or two. Who knows, though? We'll see.
Are you more of a, because I'll be honest, I haven't heard your music yet, but would you say you're more of like an Immortal Technique or a WAP type of rapper?
That's a hard, because I love both sounds and genres and artists involved. But I would probably say I like to incorporate a lot more humor into my music.
Chop, chop it up. Chop it up.
Then, so I guess in that way, Immortal Technique is kind of like no humor at all. But I would say, I guess slightly closer to WAP style.
Awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you're excited for Jomala 2020?
I cannot wait. I'm actually have to get off this call to join the official campaign planning session for tonight. Yeah, let's go.
Incredible.
Let's go.
I want to ask
you guys, where are you guys right now? You're in California, right?
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's exciting is the Senate race that'll come now, and who will run for Kamala's seat. Hopefully Barbara Lee, but let's see.
Yeah, that's my friend just DM'd me that. I was like, oh my god, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, me either actually, until you just mentioned it.
Yeah, I just saw a 2024 poll that said Cuomo's in the lead. So that's exciting too. I wanted to ask.
Love that man.
I really wanted to ask you, are prisons obsolete?
Whew, coming through with the quotes, coming through with the titles of the books. I have to read that, actually. I haven't read that as yet. But I think that, frankly, what purpose do they serve? Right? I think we have to ask ourselves that, which is that, I think a lot of people who defend the carceral state, they defend the idea of it and the way it makes them feel. They're not defending the reality of it and the practices that are part and parcel of it. Because if you actually break it down and ask people how many people come out of the prison system better than they went into the prison system, right? How much harm is actually being prevented versus created? I think when you ask these kinds of questions, people don't always have clear answers. What they always want to pivot to is, what are you going to do about murderers? And what are you going to do about rapists? And sometimes you have to ask them, what are you doing about them right now?
Exactly.
And that's not to say that our argument should be a positive argument. It shouldn't just be like, well, it can't be worse than what you got right now, right? Like what I seek to talk to people about is that we need a system of justice that will repair the harm that has been caused and address it in a serious way. Because right now we don't have it. and it makes everyone more unsafe. And that is the truth of it. I mean, I used to be a member of a group called Survived and Punished New York, which is a great organization that was created by Mariam Kaba, who's just truly an all-star, an amazing, inspirational organizer and leader. And I visited, Bedford Hills Prison, and I visited a woman who had survived domestic violence, and because she, fought to defend her life, she was criminalized for it in that act of self-defense. And you just asked, who does this serve? That she's in prison for years and years and years and actually contracted COVID and still wasn't let out of prison. And I think, obviously I'm sure that if I lived in California, I would have a lot of critiques of Gavin Newsom, and I have them from here as well. But even Gavin Newsom is doing better than Andrew Cuomo with regards to how many people are being pardoned and their sentences commuted. There are Republican governors who are doing better than Cuomo on this issue. I mean, the power of the executive is almost limitless here in New York State, and yet the governor refuses to exercise it with regards to letting people out and letting people go home.
Yeah. You should be careful with that rhetoric, though, because people might think you want the Boston bomber to be allowed to vote.
It's either Marilyn Manson or him. Those are the two quick ones that you always get.
Yeah,
exactly. I wanted to I know I'm just kind of throwing these questions at you. Did you have any more? Sorry, I didn't want to take up
good.
Okay. Is this okay? Just like one or two more?
Yeah. 1 or 2 more is fine. I got to bounce in like 10, but that's fine.
No worries. I think the main one is, and so this is kind of a longer one, but you obviously talk about housing and property often, mostly the terrible aspects like being unhoused or evicted by unfair landlords. Would life be better if we just abolished private property and transformed our society into a more collective, egalitarian one?
I think it probably would be better. I mean, I think that, look, that's not what my platform is, that I'm saying to abolish it, but my platform is to decommodify it. My platform is that every single person should have housing. And I think faced with these two options, the system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that people try and play like gotcha games about these kinds of things. And it's like, look, I care more about whether somebody has a home than what language you're using to describe that drive and that desire, because that should be the overarching principle. That should be what drives us, not a fear of saying that, this could be described as X or Y or Z and could turn like these kinds of voters away. It's like, look, I just want people to have homes. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I want people to have a home, not homes. Because the whole problem is that there's so much financial speculation.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on this show. Our 92 subscribers are going to be very pleased to see you. Thank you so much. We'll put your social media. We usually ask how we can find you, but we know where you're at.
Throw the social media on. Shout outs to all your 92. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to be like, I was there in the beginning. I was there before it became like the slightly less left show, which is far more popular.
Before we saw
it was far less. Yeah, I was educated on Sirius XM.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Have a good night. Take care.
Much love. I'll catch you later.